bent. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. So let's get started. So normally it's a Monday, a whole lot of football to talk about, a whole lot of stuff to discuss, and we're actually going to take a detour. We are going to start with a non-sports topic, but it's something that I believe in and something that is near and dear to my heart because I'm way too obsessed with all of this stuff in general. And that is the beef or the disagreement or the issues that Kevin Durant and Stephen A. Smith are currently having. Use the old picture of KD, get the hairline in there. So this to me is a problem that continues to happen with Stephen A. Smith. So Kevin Durant is asked by a reporter and basically brings up the fact that, I've been in the league 18 years. I've never heard this dude say anything good about a player. Every time I see him on TV, it is him basically, I'm going to use different words than he did, but it's basically shit talking, slandering, and being negative towards an athlete. He says, I don't think I've ever heard him say something positive unless someone wins a title. That's essentially what was said between Kevin Durant and what he was addressing to Stephen A. Smith. And it brought up a bigger issue in my mind because as soon as he said that, I almost felt like I already knew what Stephen A's response was going to be. Stephen A. was going to go on First Take or the Stephen A. Smith Show and say, Kevin Durant, do you know who I am? I have insert X, Y, and Z credentials. He has those. I have been covering this sport since insert X year. He has absolutely done that. Kevin Durant, I have done more in X amount. He's going to go through all the same normal routines when guys call him out. Which is interesting when you have built up such a reputation of calling other guys out, that even though we have his actual response, which is essentially him calling Kevin Durant sensitive, and him telling Kevin Durant, well, you've reached out to me to do interviews, you've reached out to me to talk, I know something about when you were supposed to go to Brooklyn, or you're supposed to go to the Knicks, but then you went to Brooklyn, I know that information, all that stuff can be true, and Stephen A. is 1,000% right. Where the problem is this attempt that media and sports media has tried to do over the last several years of recondition the way we all think. You can say something factual without it being meaningful. Everything Stephen A. could say about his resume is 1,000% factual. It has almost 0% meaning when it comes to the way that he displays himself and how he acts when he's on TV or on his own podcast. Him covering the league since whatever year he officially started has nothing to do with him going on there and ripping athletes on a daily basis. And that's what Kevin Durant's actual problem is. Again, media and sports media have, I'm going to talk about this too in a second here, about good NFL teams, just good. They have totally tried to destroy the word good. You either need to be great, dominant, a champion, or no one, seasons of failure, etc. They have borderline ruined the NBA for us because of the way that they want to discuss players, teams, achievements. There is no such thing anymore in their mind as having a good season or a great season. No, the only way you have a great season is you better be the champion at the end of the day. Those are who get to enjoy the season. Those are the teams that get to say good job. Everybody else, whether your player development was good, you got players signed, whether you had a playoff run for the first time in years, that stuff, media and sports media has conditioned us and is trying to continue to condition us that stuff doesn't matter. And that's the stuff we fight back against over here. That's the kind of thing that when people say, oh, was your team good? Was you like? I was talking to someone the other day. And it's crazy to me because it was one of the first times that I've seen it happen in real life where something that is said on one of these shows, ESPN FS1, makes it to a real human being and they repeat it as if it's factual. That a team that lost a game to another team could never be better. Basically, if Team X loses to Team Y, then that means, and then they go play Team Z, the other team that wins is better than the team that lost, even if they've never played each other. Like, it is insane to me when I hear people say stuff like this. And again, Stephen A., you have all the credentials in the world. All of them. You have covered this league since insert the year that you started covering it. You had and at one point in time, Stephen A. Smith was clearly the best at this. He had relationships with players that other guys didn't have. He had experiences and new information that other guys had. He was a true insider, a true journalist. He was every bit the career that he has established. He was every bit of that guy during his peak. Stephen A. Smith now is a part of the machine that would rather be critical, that would rather say, this isn't good enough, that would rather just slam players, which is what Kevin Durant is focusing on and what he is referencing. And Stephen A. won't respond to that because that's how he makes his money. Stephen A. won't say, he'll tell you everything that he's done and everything he's accomplished, but he won't tell you how he did it, and he won't respond to the upfront criticism of, hey, can you say something that's not just negative? Anyone can get popular just by talking shit. It's political season. We are in the midst of who can talk the most shit about somebody else. But we shouldn't let that be what sports gets boiled down to. We shouldn't let that's what media and sports media gets boiled down to. Who can talk the most shit? Who can be the most critical? Who can be the most negative? And then Stephen A., if you're going to call Kevin Durant sensitive, if you're going to attack him for his feelings, why are you allowed to also react in a quote-unquote sensitive way? Why are you allowed to say what you feel and how you're offended by being called a clown and how you're offended by what he said, but Durant's not allowed to? If you're in this game and you want to be critical of guys, then you have to be able to take it. If your job is going to be sitting down at a desk and ripping guys, and you're on a debate show, and so that inherently means you're putting someone up, putting someone down. To put someone up, you got to put someone down. That's what you do. Then you got to be able to take it as well. And again, the biggest problem, and this is where I think it's beyond hypocritical, and beyond, it doesn't even make sense in my opinion. Stephen A. Smith has all the credentials in the world, and he doesn't use any of them, and they are not reflective of how he acts and how he talks when he goes on TV, when he goes on his podcast, when he goes on YouTube. None of those things matter when he's just saying, this guy's a bum, this guy can't play, that's the weakest move by a superstar in the history of sports, that's a dumb business decision. None of that has to do with how long you've covered the NBA. None of that has to do with how many qualifications, how many years you worked in journalism before getting your shot. None of that stuff matters, and none of that stuff is applicable, and none of that stuff is a reason and or excuse to keep creating this sports culture of who can be the most critical. And now there's an army of them. I've said this years ago. Skip Bayless has created so many sons. Skip Bayless' style of being overly critical, over the top, that is what trickled and created a decade of some of the worst sports media in modern memory. There's outliers obviously out there. There's people that do a great job, and I'm not really addressing them. But even Stephen A. Smith, who was a made man in his own right, he learned and he saw what Skip was doing, the numbers Skips were doing, and he is, if you think the Stephen A. Smith that goes on First Take now is the same Stephen A. Smith we got 10, 15 years ago, think of his biggest moment. His biggest moment is the Kwame Brown rant. His biggest moment is literally sitting there tearing down someone else. And this is regardless if the guy can play or not. If the guy can't play, you just don't talk about him. Like, isn't it that simple? You guys have taught me that this year with Bo Nix. If you guys think Bo Nix can't play and the Broncos aren't any good, you just don't talk about him. They don't talk about Carolina and Bryce Young anymore. They have decided he's not good. They're not good. We're not going to watch him. We're not going to talk about him. So you've built this current empire that you sit on through criticism and negativity. That's what Kevin Durant is addressing. And I think he's 1,000% right. Moving on from there, another horrible segment in sports. What is a good team? I'm asking. What is a good team anymore? In any sport, but we'll start with the NFL. So, over the weekend, the Broncos got destroyed by the Ravens. The Broncos are, in my opinion, a good team, and the Ravens are a great team, one of the 3 best teams in the National Football League. What was so wild to me was the reaction from this game. Now, mind you, all week, Bronco country, Bronco fans, Bronco Twitter has been in this nothing can go wrong, everything is excellent. They're 5-3, which is way ahead of expectations. Bo Nix coming off the Rookie of the Month, coming off his best game against the Carolina Panthers. Fun fact, most people that play the Panthers this year are going to have their best game. Panthers defense, not very good. And I've been on Twitter the last couple of weeks saying Denver will be 6-4, and I believe that. I believe by the time this episode is over that the Kansas City Chiefs will have beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They'll still be undefeated, and I believe they will receive their first loss to the Denver Broncos next week. It's a division game. Denver beat them last time, and there's a bunch of other elements. I think there was a shot to beat Baltimore, but I think the fact that Kansas City winning tonight leaves the complacent window open for them versus Baltimore lost the previous week, so there was no complacent window. And when you're a good team playing a great team, you need either the amazing game plan, the complacent, or the career performance. You need something to just bridge that gap. And again, Denver is a good team. Denver has young players on defense who are stepping up. Shout out to Jonathan Cooper, just signed a new deal. Patrick Surtain, the best corner in the game. They have Cortland Sutton, who's a good receiver, not a great receiver. A good offensive line, not a great offensive line. Running back is so-so. Like, Denver has the pieces, and they are carried by a coaching staff that is doing one of the best jobs in the NFL. But Tony Romo said it all throughout the game. Their margin of error was less than that of the Baltimore Ravens, because the Baltimore Ravens have a 2-time MVP, potentially 3 times MVP at quarterback, one of the best running back of this generation, one of the best running backs of all time in Derrick Henry. A defense, even though while it struggled, still has Ahmad Abuke, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, and Zay Flowers, who first-round receiver, who was doing everything he wanted yesterday. That was great versus good. Denver, to me, is in the good class because we saw the week before when they were good versus bad, the Carolina Panthers, they looked the same way the Ravens treated them yesterday. But all of Broncos Twitter was, oh my gosh, Bo's no good no more. Oh my gosh, what's Vance Joseph doing? Oh my gosh, Sean Payton, they can't compete. Oh my gosh, they don't have the guys. We knew all of this stuff, especially when you compare them to the great teams in the league. We knew all this stuff. Part of why Denver is such a cool story this year is they have $40 million in dead cap because the Russell Wilson contract is still there. They have a rookie quarterback who has the most total touchdowns by a quarterback. Only quarterback in the league to have a passing, rushing, and receiving touchdown, by the way. It's a fun fact. They have young players on defense who are emerging. PS2, who was in his prime and dominating as one of the best players in the league and the best corner in the league. Like, that's what good teams have to do. And what makes them more exciting for next year is that they'll have all of the money from the Russell Wilson. They'll get, and the salary cap in the NFL will go up. They will start losing some of that Russell Wilson dead money, and they will get better and better and better. That is the signs of improving for a good team. And yet, NFL Twitter and Broncos country wants to be like, no, the season's horrible now. Why? Because you lost to one of the 3 best teams in football? I think the Packers think they're a good team, and they just got smoked by the Lions, who might be the best team in football. Like, we can't all act like Twitter is real all the time. And we can't all act like life is perfect. There is steps to get from Denver was horrible. Had a horrible decade. 2015 up until a year and a half ago were horrible. They have gone from horrible to good by making smart decisions. The right coach, ownership changed, allowing more money in ownership now. They have the richest owners in the sport. Their general manager, who they got a couple years ago, like, they're making these steps. They're getting rid of certain guys. They're keeping certain guys. Jerry Judy's no longer there. Like, they are doing the correct steps. It's not just, you don't go from horrible to great unless you draft specifically Andrew Luck and maybe Peyton Manning. And even then. Like, is it okay to just be a good NFL team? And again, Denver's not in line to win a Super Bowl this year. Denver's not in line to win a Super Bowl next year. But if they went from horrible to last year, they were average, to this year, they're good. Next year, they have potential to be great. And then after that, we'll see where they sit. No one's going to believe this because of the public perception of Bo Nix. But let's take the team if I'm Denver and I'm the Broncos, I'm looking at the team I just played yesterday, the Ravens, saying, okay, that's where I want to be. Remember Lamar as a rookie and as a second year player? He made some overthrows. He wasn't supremely accurate, but they had a running game. They had playmakers on defense, and then they started shifting the offense for Lamar to become the MVP of the National Football League, now a 2-time MVP. And I'm not saying Bo is going to be Lamar. There's only one Lamar Jackson ever. I'm aware of that. But Sean has been tailoring the offense to do more stuff that Bo likes. They have a up-and-coming defense, still one of the best defenses in the National Football League. Disregard yesterday, yes, they gave up 41 points. Still a great defense, and can be a whole lot of teams putting up 15 or 41 points on the Broncos this year. I'd argue they're not going to give up more than 30 again the remainder of the year. But you're shifting the offense towards Bo. Sean and Vance Joseph have this offense and defense doing what they want to do. They're going to keep getting talent. Bo's going to get more accurate. Bo's going to get more comfortable. Bo is going to progress as a player. Not saying he's ever got to be the MVP Lamar is, but the steps that Baltimore took to go from those last year with Flacco was bad to still struggling, enter Lamar, get that spark, get good, then get great, and now you're one of the best teams in football. Those are the steps that good franchises make, well-run businesses do. You can't just snap your finger and say, everything's great now. It doesn't work like that. Man, there's a lot of stuff to talk about today. We still have HardRight, HardLeft. It is a Monday. We got our second firing of the NFL. Dennis Allen fired from the Saints. Tony's going to stop by. And what franchise seems to just keep doing the same mistakes over and over again? This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. their owner is impatient, crazy, and irrational. Because I like Shane Steichen as a head coach. I do. I'm not as familiar with the general manager. I'm not going to really quote, how good or bad he is. He has gotten guys like a Quentin Nelson. If Anthony Richardson did develop, he's gotten a Michael Pittman. So he's, I believe, with who the overall talent on the roster, general manager, good enough at least. Especially when you have someone like Shane Steichen as your head coach. But I do firmly believe the decision to bench Anthony Richardson was a call from Jim Irsay, who wants to be back in the Peyton Manning era where he's winning 10, 11, 12 games every single year. His quarterback's throwing for 4,000 yards. He has one of the best offenses, one of the best teams in the National Football League. He wants to go back to Andrew Luck those first couple of years, winning 11-plus games, making the playoffs. That's what he believes. He believes that the Indianapolis Colts are one of the best franchises in sports, not just that they were lucky to get two supremely talented quarterbacks. So you draft Anthony, their owner, and we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. So the Saints fired Dennis Allen, right? And everyone's going to take it as just a sign for, Dennis Allen's not a good coach. Him and Derek Carr don't work, yada, 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 et cetera. Like, at what point, and the Saints are owned by the same ownership group that owns the Pelicans. So New Orleans, they own both. The Benson family, Gail Benson, as a Pelicans fan, love Gail. She's been great for the Pelicans. And the Pelicans have a lot of talent right now, which makes up for maybe potentially she's not as great as I think. There's just more talent there. But everyone's going to say, Dennis Allen, of course, he's not a good enough head coach. Dennis Allen had to be fired. Look at Saints Twitter. That's kind of what they're all saying at the moment. And I agree with them for the most part. I do also wonder, though, how is this going to affect future players from wanting to sign there? Why does that matter? Dennis Allen's gone. Look how bad it got prior to Dennis Allen being fired. The Saints yesterday, Michael Thomas, former player, former Saints great receiver, came out ripping Derek Carr, saying, "Why'd you throw him a hospital ball to Chris Olave?" Goes off on Twitter. Players after the game, one goes straight to Twitter and says, "Dude, we just lost to the Carolina Panthers. It was basically like a college bowl game and a bad one at that." Cameron Jordan doesn't even go to the locker room. He's upset. He's walking down part of the facility. And they're all coming out and saying, "You know what, man, like, y'all deserve better. Like, we suck. We know." Like, all these different things happen in this one window of time. If I'm a player in the future and I want to go sign with the New Orleans Saints, what makes me want to do it? What makes me want to go, "Oh, yeah, that's the franchise I want to go with"? Because here's the thing, and players are starting to pick on this more and more. It's not just who's your head coach. It's not just who's your general manager. Who is the owner? Who has the outright say in the organization? And is it well run? Because NFL careers are not that long. Dennis Allen's been there for years. How many guys' careers have been altered because Dennis Allen and Derek Carr have been their coach quarterback? And if you're the next team, if you're the next player that wants to go there, what makes you think that you're not going to have a similar situation with Derek Carr or with whoever's the next quarterback, or the next head coach? Because the Saints have just shown you they're an organization that's willing to ride with their head coach for so long that when it goes up in flames, that's what it looks like. And again, losing to the Carolina Panthers isn't just losing a football game. It's losing horribly. That is, and I'm not even trying to be mean here. And like, even Panther players were coming out on Twitter and trolling the Saints, saying, "We got the same record. We got the dub, blah, blah." Like, I think this is a really bad. The Saints are already in two really bad positions. They're in cap hell. The Saints, there's not a lot of guys, which is why Marshawn Lattimore has been linked to different trades. There's not a lot of guys they can even get rid of and get on the right side of the salary cap to help them rebuild faster. So salary cap is hell. Head coach, we don't know what it's going to be. And what head coach is really going to want to tie themselves now to this ownership group that just let it get this bad, or this cap situation, which they're stuck with? Like, Saints fans are like, oh, we can get Ben Johnson and Robert Saleh and we're going to be good. Why would they want to go there now? This is a real question. Why would they want to go there? Why would they want to go to a place where you can't trust ownership, your salary cap sucks, and your best players are closer to the way out than they're on the way here? Like Alvin Kamara re-signed. I understand as a running back why you'd want to re-sign and get your money. Careers are shorter. But after that, Cam Jordan's older. They're all like, who on this team besides Chris Olave and Marshawn Lattimore, which might be traded, and Olave, who knows if he's going to re-sign, like, the Saints have put themselves in a horrible situation by allowing Dennis Allen to be there this long. Again, I've said this about all the smart organizations in football and smart organizations in sports. And just in life, you have to eventually pick up on this. If something is wrong, if something is not working, I'm not saying don't have some persistence or try to fight through it, but also have an understanding of this is too wrong. We can't fix this. It's got to end. If you're in a relationship, I'm not saying end it after your first argument, but if you argue every day for 2 months straight, okay, maybe it's time, the relationship is run its course, cool, go your separate ways. You cannot let things just fester this long and get this bad, because at some point, you're going to have other people in that position. The Saints are going to have other players on the roster. They're going to have another head coach. They're going to have another general manager. But ownership is going to be your longest running position unless they decide to sell the team on a whim. And right now with Gail Benson and that family, because they own both the Pelicans and the Saints, even more unlikely. But like, what are you supposed to do? If you're the head coach, you're not going to get a new boss anytime soon. You're stuck with it. Again, if I'm Ben Johnson, why would I want to go there? Why would I want to go there? Because I get the last year of Cam Jordan? I doubt Derek Carr is there. The Saints would need, because the comparison, I think, to the average fan would be the Broncos in the sense that the Broncos are dealing with Russell Wilson no longer there, so you've got to hit on a quarterback and low-end draft picks. That's really the only way you salvage it. And Denver has done a decent job of that. If Bo Nix turns out to be the player that Sean Payton thinks he can be, they just signed Jonathan Cooper, 7th-round pick. That 21 draft, they got Miners, Sertan, and Jonathan Cooper. All three have re-signed for multi-year deals. That is it. That's how you have to do it. But you have to knock one of these picks, these unconventional picks, and or your quarterback out the park. Otherwise, you are stuck in cap hell. You are stuck in ownership hell, all because you decided not to pull the trigger sooner. And that's 10,000%. It's unfortunate, but it's 10,000% on the owner. And because she wasn't willing to admit the mistake when it was happening, it is now ballooned into this huge travesty for them. So, again, everyone's getting off their Dennis Allen jokes, and everyone's saying, all the Saints Twitter is excited. They're like, oh, yeah, we finally got rid of Dennis Allen. Let's celebrate, throw some on the grill. The next guy sees that. The next set of players see that. And besides the guys that you draft and have to be there, how many of them are going to want to go through that? Again, being a dysfunctional organization starts at the top. The Jets are dysfunctional, it starts at the top. The Browns are dysfunctional, it starts at the top. The Saints are now dysfunctional, and it unfortunately, and I love Gail because she owns a team that I like, and she does a really good job with the Pelicans, it's now dysfunctional. And with that, we are joined by the richest man y'all will never meet. Tony is in the building. How you doing, man?
What's going on, man?
So, not any one particular game I want to point out this week. There wasn't no big NFL game or nothing this weekend. It's kind of a slow day for football. So,
as they all are.
Hey man, look, so we texted prior to the Broncos-Ravens game, and you asked me, what's the weakest part of Denver's defense? And I'm like, it's linebacker, and it's not middle linebacker specifically, and it's not close. Especially when Singleton went out, covering tight ends is a problem, and they are not great tacklers if the D-line themselves are not getting great penetration. Like, if the D-line's getting pressure, then obviously everybody looks better. but one-on-one, there's some struggles there and things to take advantage of. And so my concern was if Henry gets going, well, they're just going to run over Denver. That's going to turn to a blowout really quick. I was unaware, though, Vance Joseph. Let me ask this from another fan. Is it wild to see teams just defend Lamar in a way that just objectively doesn't work? Vance has had one game plan all year, which is rush and rely on the fact you have the best set of cover corners in the league. And then he sees Lamar Jackson in front of him and goes, "Oh, I don't think this will work," or "I'm so scared of Lamar breaking off a big run off one of these passes." He spends the whole first half playing zone. And even after one catch fine, two catch fine, at no point did he see Zay Flowers going off and go, "Okay, let's put PS2 on him." No, we're just going to continue to again, still in this zone type of coverage. There's plays, you go look at the film. PS2's on the other side of the field. Zay Flowers on one side of the field, and Lamar's like, bet. And what is that? I mean, I guess the way to phrase this question, what is your experience as a fan seeing, like, what are the defenses you think work and don't work against Lamar?
The 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 Patrick Surtain not on Zay Flowers thing was very funny. It was very funny to see. It was very
That
funny to
was
see because I didn't expect that at all. And I don't know if they felt like Zay Flowers didn't warrant that or what. It just never. I just did not expect that. I thought he'd be shadowing Zay Flowers all day. So
I thought so too.
um to the other question, to your initial question, is the idea that people the idea that teams look to, we want to make Lamar beat us from the pocket. We want to make Lamar throw the ball. And I guess it's a I would assume at least it's an idea of, okay, well, he's A plus with his legs. He's A or A minus with his arm in theory. So it's like
Mhm.
which of the lesser evils do you want to take? But it's one of those things where it's like one is always going to get the other going. And yesterday, because of the lack of adjustment, if you will, and how the game just kind of got out of hand, he never had to really run,
Mhm.
and he continued to just stay in the pocket and throw the ball. I don't. It's it's how can I put it? It's not weird to see the way they defend Lamar. It's just it's really nothing you can do. You're at the mercy of the offense, especially with Derrick Henry now. So it's just like you kind of got to pick and just hope for the best on the other end. It's like if you want to try to take away the run game, you have to hope that you have the secondary that can stand up and make it tough in the pass game. If you want to try to, take away the passing lanes and limit the explosive plays down the field throwing, you open yourself up to a lot of stuff underneath with him on, run pass options or Derrick Henry in 22 personnel or 12 personnel and running heavy. You just really don't have a way to defend them. You just kind of have to hope that shit just goes your way.
It
Case in
was
point, week one with Kansas City. Like you just kind of gotta hope that it works out for you.
no, it's infuriating because I do think Denver made a concerted effort to stop Derrick Henry in the first half, which is why you don't see a lot of those. And if you look at his story about Henry's career, it's a thing that makes him great. Most of his big runs and explosive runs are third quarter, fourth quarter. Like he is the everybody says, "Oh, you beat down the defense in the running game." Derrick Henry's entire career is that. Um, it's different than he just joined. It was him, AP, and I think they said LT. It was 7 consecutive seasons of 10 rushing touchdowns for a running back.
I think it was
Um,
LT.
yeah. And it's like those two, like AP and LT were just their speed was just different. So like they could take a first quarter run pitch and just boom, go to the house. And not that Derrick Henry's not fast, but it genuinely does feel like he just gets faster as the game goes on. Cause like you just don't want to. I'm watching the game and I'm like, man, tackling this motherfucker's a son of a bitch. But so it did feel like they were dedicated to that. But then I get the zone concept, but the problem with what I was irritated with watching the game was like Denver's not a zone team. And you don't have to be when you like there's teams that have to be zone teams. They just don't have the corners to do it. Denver, the Jets, and maybe there's a team I'm missing, are the only teams that you could just genuinely say, like, look, you just play man to man and you live with the results of the other 8 guys. And then in the second half, because Lamar was thrown everywhere, and then Derrick Henry starts rolling, and then the O line, and it was just. And I'll say this, my last thought before moving on from them. the most infuriating thing, and I don't know from a different fan's perspective for Bo Nix is Bo. I don't think, obviously, I don't think he's nearly as bad as everybody says. The catching touchdown was hilarious, a receiving touchdown. His misses are just horrible. He puts together 5, 6 plays in a row where you're like, okay, I get it, I see the vision, and then he just overthrows Troy Franklin in the end zone, and I'm like, man, this shit should have been 14-14. But with that being said, going from there, and I know, do the Ravens, in your opinion, are games like yesterday felt like it, but are games theirs to lose? So Bill Belichick came out and said, "Look, I don't think the Ravens have actually lost a game this year, or sorry,
Mm-hmm.
they haven't been beaten this year. They just lose the game by themselves. Like they have to do something that messes it up." Is that how you feel about this team currently?
Yeah, that's how I felt about them for the last few. That's how I felt about the Ravens probably for the last 5 years. Honestly, the Ravens don't like I said when we text. Lamar does not lose games by more than a touchdown. Literally, like
Mm-hmm.
he's probably since he became full-time starter, he probably has 3 games where he lost by more than 7 points, and I can kind of name those off top. It's the Bengals game in 2021 when the whole team was hurt. It's the Cleveland game in 2019, which they promptly went on to win 14 straight games after that. And it's the what's the other one if I can think? Honestly, those might be the only two. Like he does not lose in the Titans game if we talk in playoffs, like Titans
Mm-hmm.
game, Bills game. But regular season wise, like he just does not lose games by more than one score. And they don't they don't get beat. They don't get beat. They lose the game. If you look at the majority of their losses since 2000, I'll say 21. I'll say 2021 because this one it was like really apparent. If you look
Mm-hmm.
at the majority of their losses, at some point, and the stat is out there, it's easy to find. At some point, they were up 10 points in the game.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they were up 10 points in the second half of the game. Inside of that, they were up 10 points in the fourth quarter of the game. So it's like they don't get beat. They lose games, and that's the frustrating part. But when it looks good, it looks like yesterday.
No, 1,000%. Them, I think right now, again, I think both of you and I are on the same page. We're like Kansas City. You have to give Kansas City the respect because obviously what Mahomes, Kelsey, and Reed have accomplished is all time. But this current version of them, um, right now, the two best teams in the sport, in my opinion, are the Ravens and the Lions. And I'd probably give a slight edge to the Lions, and that's mainly because uh, the thing that I think Baltimore can do to lose itself a game, I don't think the Lions will. Like the Lions don't give a rip if Jared Goff could throw 10 times. They don't give a rip. They would prefer if they just ran it 30, 40 times. And Baltimore, I think, has better personnel to do that, but it is weird that
Mm-hmm.
in some of these spots, like they just stopped. They're like, oh, we could easily be the best running team of all time.
Extremely fair point.
Yeah, and statistically
Extremely
they do.
fair point.
Dan Campbell just says fist up, fuck it, let's go. And it's like, no, we're gonna keep this going. Like, and that's probably right now the only difference. I know you've talked about John Harbaugh and his coaching before in the past. Um, this stat I did think was incredible because you texted me that about the double digit games, and it was Lamar had the second longest streak in the league in between losing by 10 or more points, and it was only to Josh Allen, who then lost his streak earlier this year to the Ravens. So
Mm-hmm.
like there's just a handful, like it's those two and Mahomes are the hardest quarterbacks to blow out. Mahomes hasn't been blown out since the Super Bowl. Um, so shout out to them. Uh, my next thing I wanted to, and I'm not trying to just reiterate some of these points. Um, oh, here we go. And I want your opinion on this because there has been, and we talked a little bit about this last week about the pushback on the NBA, the ratings being down the first week, and you had pointed out to the Stars and the way the Celtics played. And I guess I wanted some clarification on that is, do you think the Celtics play differently than those prime Warrior teams where I don't have the numbers up? I know the Celtics take more threes, but stylistically it's the same thing as far as 4 or 5 shooters on the court, spread it out, shoot the most threes in the league, make the most threes in the league.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, besides just the narrative around Boston, is the difference between what the Warriors are doing during their heyday, Steph, Clay, KD, versus what the Celtics are doing right now?
it's just how it looks. It's really just how it looks because when you go to those Warriors teams, we talking pre KD, it was just a lot of Steph and Clay doing that thing, and other guys would just get it where they could. When we talking KD, it was Steph, KD, and Clay doing their thing, and Draymond on the defensive side, and you can kind of just point to it. It made sense because of how it looked. With the
Mhm.
Celtics, you've you always knew Clay, Steph, and KD to be great shooters. You knew that. The Celtics team, you've seen Jaylen Brown not be where he is now. You've seen Jason Tatum not be where he is now. And then they have these pieces around them. They bring in Drew, they bring in Kristaps, they bring back Al, they bring in Derek White. And it's just the look. It's not as glamorous as the Warriors did it because, we hadn't seen it like that up to that point. We never seen it before. So in seeing it and seeing how it looked when Steph and Clay were doing it, it was very exciting. It was 35, 40 feet pull-ups, um 37 points, no dribbles. Like it was the look of it. And it wasn't 5 out. And not only
Mhm.
is what the Celtics do 5 out with the starters, it's 5 out when they bring in the bench. And it's just very dominant because of the volume, the ability to make, and then the defensive side. It's one thing if this was just a team that put up a bunch of threes, they didn't make them, and on those nights where they didn't make them, they gave up 140. This
Mhm.
is a team that if it's a night where they're not making those threes, you'd be hard pressed to blow them out because they're so good defensively. So to answer that question, it's the look. Like if it looked in the way that we had seen before, it may elicit a different emotional reaction from fans. But because it's just very different than what we've ever seen,
Mhm.
people are kind of taken aback by it because of not only how much it works, but like they won a championship with it, and we had only ever known the Warriors to do that.
That's valid. Speaking of that, do you think obviously the usual suspects, the Sixers, the Bucks clearly are down at the moment, some of that due to injury, some of that due to just lesser play from their stars. Cleveland's 6-0 or 7-0 at the moment, but I don't think anyone take well all Donovan Mitchell is going to end up with when you read like his stat sheet page at the end of his career, it's going to look like one of the greatest players ever. And I like Donovan Mitchell, but Donovan Mitchell's never been a superstar in that regard, and maybe that's unfair just because he's played in Utah and Cleveland. Like the New York Donovan Mitchell might have an entirely different
It's
reputation.
very funny. It's
Yeah, it's like
very funny.
I'm looking at him like, man, you should be like we should look at you as like one of the best players in the league. Like you have regular season success. You don't have a ring, but Donovan Mitchell's not a guy we look at and goes, "Oh, he just shits the bed in the playoffs." Like he has some great playoff performances. He just is in two of maybe the most unmarketable cities in the NBA. Um, but with that being said, do you feel like the Celtics are clearly the best team in the league right now, or do you think there is another team that can contend with them?
I fight every day not to say like it's. I battle with not saying the words, but like it's very clear. I don't see a way that they don't do it again. I just don't. Barring injury,
Mhm.
and even in that case, it's like who's injured. It's just it's they're just a great team. They've constructed this in a way where it can last. They've constructed this in a way where it can last, and they're doing it night in and night out with guys that play. It's not a case of like, okay, this is good, but he's eventually going to miss 15 games. This is good, but he's eventually going to be out 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Like, obviously the Kristaps of it all is what it is, but that was known coming in. So
Mhm.
it's not like you got Kristaps with the idea of like he's going to play 75 games. Like that was
Yeah.
known that he's eventually going to get hurt and he's going to be out for some time, and you're going to have to, deal with that. And they accounted for that, and they are where they are now.
No, that's valid. Two more things before we get chatty here. The one, we've said some good things about your teams. We got to get into the probably your least good favorite sports team at the moment. I was
I know what
told,
this is about. I
I
know what
was,
this is
I
about.
was told Now, I'm a college football casual. Now, I'm a little more involved this year because NCAA 25 was great,
Oh
and
no,
that's had me.
that's not my least favorite sports team. I thought you were talking about
Oh no, no,
fucking.
not least favorite, but you're least good at the moment. It's between them and the Red Sox. We could talk about that. I
I'm
do
about
have
to
a question
say.
about the Red Sox. Um, they're my last point. Um, what is going on, man? I was like, it's USC. It is still a traditional national power. I understand some of that stuff has changed, especially on the West Coast specifically. I know with Nike's involvement or Phil Knight's involvement in Oregon, that's been a huge revolution for them over the last decade. But like Lincoln Riley, I think I saw it's 12-12 in his last 24 games. Like, explain to me like this big time signing they get it from Oklahoma and why isn't it working?
It's not working in the sense that it's not working because they were so good for year one that we kind of over accounted for the fact that like this isn't really a good team, and it hasn't been a good team. Like because Caleb was so great in year one, they kind of they they went on a run that we thought that okay, this can only go up, and that inevitably was not the case because you saw how they played in that first year. Like it was a turnover dependent defense that can only last for but so long. Um, it was a one man show offensively in a sense because Caleb was everything. And when he got hurt in the Pac-12 title game, it really showed the deficiencies of the team because you can't get stops. And when your offense is this one guy and he's on one leg, not much you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So you come out of that, you lose the fucking what bowl game were they in there? Yeah, I want to say the Cotton Bowl or the Sugar Bowl was one of them. I think it was the Cotton Bowl because it was in Dallas. So they made the Cotton Bowl. You blow a lead to Tulane in that game, but for me, I come out of that like okay, didn't think they'd be here anyway. So this is a plus for me. I can take that. I can eat that, take that on the chin, and we go on to next year. Last season, because they still have Alex Grinch, who was the former DC, now gone, because they still have him based on the results of that first year, and Lincoln Riley's so committed to keeping his guy with him, the defense is worse. The offense isn't as good. And last year was a disaster by all accounts. So you come into this year with essentially a fresh start. Caleb's gone. You're not expecting them to be a great team, but you do think there's pieces here for Lincoln to really kind of establish a culture here outside of having the five-star Heisman quarterback. Like he can really lay the groundwork of what can be good.
Mm-hmm.
And the LSU win was big. The LSU win was big. They kept it close in Michigan. They probably should have won that game if Lincoln didn't punt the first half. Like these are even after that game, they still find themselves, I think, from 11-13. They go into the Penn State game. I think it wasn't the Penn State game. They go to Minnesota, 11th in the country, blow a second half lead there. They go into the Penn State game still with a chance because at that point, if they beat Penn State, that means, and LSU was top 10 at that point. That means two of which would have been 3 wins, I believe, at the time, or 4 wins maybe. 2 of those 3 or 4 would have been against top 10 teams. And Penn State was like 3 at the time. You would have still put yourself in position for the Big Ten title. You would have still put yourself in position for a playoff shot. Since that Minnesota loss, they've fallen completely off. They've lost to Minnesota, came to Maryland and lost to Penn State after being up double digits, and they just lost to Washington. 5 losses on the year. Most of the losses have been by 7 points or less. I think all of them. All of the losses have been by 7 points or less. And it's just with the expectation for Lincoln Riley coming into here was to build this up gradually and make it great. And he hasn't really had that chance, but he hasn't done the necessary work to make it that either. This
Mm-hmm.
is all kind of thrown together in a sense, and not recruiting in-state is a big fucking problem for him. Not recruiting enough California talent is killing the brand and it's hurting the roster because he's continuing to try to bring guys from down south to USC and is not it's not meshing well, and it doesn't work with the fan base they have there. Trying to live off the USC name based on what happened 20 years ago has not worked. And they find themselves in a space now where you can't fire Lincoln. I think he has maybe 2 or 3 years left on the deal. There's no future for this team, really. There's just this mediocre level that you can see because they're losing recruits. They're getting recruits in only for them to transfer a year later because they're either not playing or not happy. The shit is a mess, to make all of that in one bubble. Like, the shit is just a mess. It should be better, but I just don't see where it gets better.
Yeah. No, that's pretty good. That's great, Brett. I got nothing out of that. That pretty much sums it up. Even from the people that I respect that watch college football and talk about it. The in-state recruiting I know has been a huge thing. Um, I think what Reggie's like 6 years older than me. So like I grew up and like Reggie Bush was a hero over here. I mean, even his high school, like I lived like 10 minutes from where he went to high school. He was at high school at the same time. Him and Matt Leinart, my uncles went to the school. And so I don't, again, certain guys like that, which for these national powers are supposed to break through, like Reggie's arguably the most famous college athlete ever. Like he's in that handful of guys who have a claim to that. So the in-state recruiting is a big one that I've been hearing a lot. Absolute last before we let you go. Chances on we'll do it on percentage basis. So how much faith you have in this?
Mm-hmm.
Red Sox offer Soto 10 years, 550.
It'd be a slap in the face if they did that. They won't do it. 0% they offer him. Honestly, I don't think they'll offer him at all.
You don't think so? You don't think they're ever going to get back into spending big money?
I just don't see it. I really don't see it. I don't think they'll offer him at all because he's going to command upwards to $600 million. They're not going to do that, and they're not going to do that. And they're committed to where they're at right now with the young core. It's for right or wrong. Like they're committed to it. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I just like those days are over, and I'm not expecting them to come back. They were fun when I knew for a fact that the fall's coming. Guys are free agents. The Red Sox are throwing money. Those days were I enjoyed them in my teenage years. I could count on the Red Sox spending some money, but those days are over. Like I don't see them offering Juan Soto at all, and it's a mistake. It's a big fucking mistake, but I just don't see it.
You think it's a mistake to offer him or a mistake to not offer him?
It's a mistake to not offer him, and I don't see them offering him. Like when they didn't go all in on Shohei, I was done. I know where we're at with it. When you're not going all in on the biggest free agent maybe ever, I know where we're at. I know where we're at with it.
Where do you think Soto? Do you think he stays in New York or supposedly right now the story is it's between so. I thought it was interesting. So Jeff Passage, who's respected reporter, he's one of the top 2 or 3 guys right now in Baseball Inside. I did think it was interesting. He said expect Soto either stay with the Yankees or go with the Mets, but stay in New York. And part of that is geographically because you can go home easier from New York. He did say, however, for the first time I've ever heard any reporter say this, is like someone asked him would the Dodgers put an offer in for him. Mm-hmm. And he said no, but I also think some of that is because if the Dodgers offered Juan Soto one of these huge mega contracts, and the Dodgers have a lot of deferred money right now on their current team, he's like, that would also, they probably know that might be the thing that forces baseball to step in and say, hey, we're gonna start salary capping this. Like you can't just keep going fucking every single guy worth $600 million is all on one team.
Yeah.
And so
honestly, that in theory it sounds good, but like, let's be fucking real, man. Like Rob Manfred don't give a shit, and them owners don't really give a shit.
I'm aware.
To answer your question before we get out of here, because if they gave a shit about winning, like they would have had this, like in place years ago. This isn't the first time that like we have like an all-star team. But to answer your question, me personally, I think he's a Dodger or a Met next year. I don't think the Yankees are going to offer him enough money to stay. I don't think they're there either. They're not. I don't think they're as cheap as the Red Sox are now. But those days of the Yankees just buying guys, those days are gone too. So I don't think the Yankees are going to offer him enough to stay. I think he's a Met or a Dodger next year.
No, it's valid. It's and some of that is too, and like for the ownership part, like some of these groups now, like the Yankees and Red Sox historically, because they've been sole proprietorship, so it's only one guy having to write all the checks. They were just some of the first billionaires in the sport. Now you got a group like you can't compete with the Dodgers. Like Magic Johnson is a billionaire several times over at this point, and he's one of the broke people on the Dodgers ownership group. Like that's how much money is currently going through the Los Angeles Dodgers system. And so it's like some of the shit you got to put your hands up. Man, look. Shout out to my wife. My team don't even got a fucking stadium right now. The fucking hurricane ripped that shit up.
That is crazy. They don't have a they don't
Like
have a place to
they
play.
just don't got a
That is
place to
crazy.
play.
That is crazy.
Oh man. Hey, no, appreciate you as always, man. We'll catch up again next week.
Peace.
This is actually a big issue, which the hard left is. I think I'm done defending John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh, Tony has been telling me for the last several weeks, has never been a great coach. He's just been a good coach, but a message that's dying out because he's been there for so long. And I've given some pushback on that. I do think John, in my opinion, mainly because of his success, has always been he's a really good head coach, and then obviously all these guys need players, right? Like John Harbaugh inherited Ray Lewis. He inherited Ed Reed. He got a young Joe Flacco who turned into a great quarterback. But I was watching the game on Sunday, and I'm like, look, man, I'm all for being creative, especially in the goal line. Andy Reid has made that really popular. All these reverse gadget plays that specifically he's been able to pull off. But the reality is, why are we doing a direct snap to Derrick Henry on fourth down? The most dangerous, most effective play the entire NFL season has been Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry RPO. And you just take it out of Lamar's hands. You don't even fake it. You don't even give him the chance to make it seem like he could be involved in the play. You just totally remove him. Hard left, and this, man, I wish I was wrong about that again this week. I still stand on, I think Denver would have had a chance. I think complacency matters. If the Ravens had lost the previous week, or had won the previous week, I'm sorry, I think there is a chance for complacency and that Denver would have been in that game. But again, great team beats good team. It happens. Got blown out. I don't really care about the final score. But yeah. So it is a Monday, and we have to look ourselves in the mirror, and it's important. We can brag about what we were right about, but we also have to be honest about what we were wrong about. And so, with that being said, it is a Monday, so that means HardRight, HardLeft, where I go through and I say the thing that I believe that I got the most right from the week prior, or one of my old takes, to the thing that I got the most wrong. So, let's start on a good note. Have to, right? HardRight. The thing I feel like I was the most right about was clearly, in my opinion, the LA Dodgers. The Dodgers won the World Series in 5 games, and it played out almost exactly how I thought it would. Remember, I said the Yankees had more arms if this was going to be a 6-7 game series, and the Dodgers were making a bunch of riskier moves, using the bullpen more. Dave Roberts was throwing full-on bullpen games, pulling guys out after 4 or 5 innings. Now, Roberts was potentially saved from his own potential mistake, because he did get more innings out of his starters, and I think he inherently said. He would start games saying, hey, I hope I get 3 or 4 innings, and Yamamoto went 5+ a couple times, Flaherty went 5+, there was the starting pitching for the Dodgers was better and gave them more innings than I thought that Dave Roberts thought they were going to be, or the team thought they were going to be. But I also said, because of the way he was managing, it was win now. We can't keep doing this game after game after game. I think they even brought up in game 4, the one game the Dodgers lost, that the Yankees scored a bunch of runs and the Dodgers relief pitchers threw 100 pitches. And it's like, this is not consistent. This is very much win now. And so the Dodgers needed to win in 5 games, and the Dodgers did win in 5 games. So even if Dave Roberts was wrong long term, the Dodgers never had to suffer any of those consequences. So the Yankees had, and it showed in Garrett Cole, is like Garrett Cole, the Dodgers did not have a guy who they could say, hey, go out there and throw until your arm falls off. That guy just does not exist on this current Dodgers rotation with all of the injuries. They didn't want to go, again, by the time Game 7 rolled around, if the Yankees somehow pulled it to a Game 7, it would have been scary, because the Yankees not only could have brought Cole back out, like they had more arms usable than the Dodgers, and the Dodgers in Game 7 would be using the same guys they've used the whole series with the Padres, the whole series with the Mets. They've been overloading their bullpen all playoffs. And some of that is unfortunately just due to the injuries. So they don't have their full rotation. So to some degree, that's understandable. But they needed to win this series. They needed to win it quickly. And so, again, Dodgers win in 5. But I think the ultimate vindication for why this deserves to be HardRight is Vegas does not care about feelings. Vegas does not care about emotions. Vegas does not care about the fan base. Vegas cares about money. And there's this real short window where the Yankees are up 5-0 in Game 4. Or Game 5, I'm sorry. And Vegas starts, the line for the Yankees to win the World Series starts going up and up and up. To the point of, at one point in time, I think it was win $100 to, if you bet $100, you could win $700 for the Yankees win the World Series, and they're down 3-0. And then at one point it turned to bet $100, you're only going to win $170. So meaning even Vegas was sitting there thinking, hey, the Yankees win this game, then they got Game 6 and 7 in LA, but the Dodgers are going to be running on fumes because of all the amount of times that their pitchers and relief pitchers specifically have thrown. Like, there was a lot of things adding up to where it was, yes, the Yankees lost and the Yankees collapsed, and as a pronoun Yankee hater, loved it, but there was a moment there where it was like, does New York, in a series that ended in 5 games, which would normally clarify dominance and that New York never had a shot, there was real momentum in New York for about an hour. And then they started making errors, the 5th inning from hell, and the Dodgers won the World Series in 5 games. But yeah, I firmly stand on this, and Vegas started to reflect it. The Dodgers needed to win that series, and they needed to win it quicker rather than later. So we also have to look ourselves in the mirror and say things that we're wrong about. And I think the world's wrong about this, but let's be fair. Most people, most content creators, most YouTubers, when they have an opinion that's right, they want all the credit. And when they have an opinion that's wrong, a lot of times they just say, oh, we were all wrong. I want to give some credit and a shout out to a good NFC team. A a lot of times because of relationships with their respective networks, I've talked about this a bunch, that good NFL teams don't get talked about because they're not specifically the Cowboys or the Packers or, in this case, the Chiefs, who have been obviously in these Super Bowls. The Arizona Cardinals are a good football team. And we all, at this point, we have to acknowledge them for what they are, which is a very good football team. Look, I had the Cardinals. I had them fighting with Seattle, and I had them in last place in the NFC West. They're not going to finish there. Now, some of their placement in division is because of injuries. I still believe if everybody was healthy, the Niners are better than them. I still believe if everyone is healthy, the Rams are better than them. I still believe them and the Seahawks I go back and forth with. But the reality is, yesterday they played a game, and they were the more physically dominating team against a defense that I've been told is really good in the Chicago Bears. Kyler Murray, that same way I've been talking about Josh Allen all year, where he just had that, something just clicked, and he just understands how to play the quarterback position better. Kyler Murray had that click. Kyler Murray, while his stats might not be out of this world, if you just watch him, the way he's like on a play-by-play basis, he's no longer just trying to make the big play to make the big play. He is running the offense. His decision-making is far better than it's ever been at any point of his career. And there's still a lot of upside to go with Kyler Murray. He still has those kind of runs that only he can make because he's super elusive. He still has weapons, whether it's Michael Smith or Marvin Harrison Jr., who that connection will continue to grow. The defense is, while they're not great currently statistically, they are starting to show that Jonathan Gannon, why he was brought over there is to pair him with, if he could handle the defense and Kyler could handle the offense, they are starting to round into shape as a good football team. And I just thought there was no way. I thought Kyler Murray was going to turn into one of those quarterbacks who are here today, gone tomorrow in the grand scheme of things. I thought him and Trevor Lawrence were both struggling with this, first overall pick, got all this money, and what have you done for me lately? But if you see the trajectory of what Trevor Lawrence has been doing, and you see the trajectory of what Kyler Murray's been doing, and this Arizona Cardinals team as a whole, remember, last year, 2 years ago, when the Eagles lost both coordinators, Steichen got the immediate credit for how good he was doing because he was taking Indianapolis backups, and he was still getting Indy. He got Indy and Gardner Minshew to the playoffs. And so he was doing that, and he got all this credit as, he was the best coach on that staff. Jonathan Gannon was the same coach, was the defensive coordinator in the year Philly led the world in sacks, went to the Super Bowl, had a top 5 defense. And while Arizona's not that, they just simply don't have the talent for that yet. They are starting to round into form. They are starting to look like the football team he wants them to be. Again, Kyler Murray, these receivers who he's going to get more and more connection with, more and more big plays are going to come out of it. They've got a running game between both their running backs. We just saw, I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but he just had a 50-yard touchdown run with under 30 seconds to go, and it was the longest run ever with under 30 seconds. And so Connors, their starting running back, obviously, he's been great. He's breaking tackles left and right. They're a physical football team, legitimately. And again, the Bears are more talented than the Cardinals, and the Cardinals manhandled them all day. I watched the entire game, start to finish. The Cardinals manhandled them. They lived in the backfield. They're a more physical running team. Kyler looks like he just, again, stats aside, he just has it. He has just figured it out from the quarterback position. He is playing the game mentally at a better level than he ever has any other point of his career. And again, that's playing a game when you are clearly undermanned. You clearly don't have the talent. They don't have the guys on defense to be a top 10 defense. They don't have the guys on offense to be a top 10 offense, even with Marvin Harrison there. This is offensive, defensive. This is a lot of these teams, I cannot impress upon it enough, and I just was not sold, which is why this is me admitting I'm wrong. The amount of coaching and its impact that is so clearly evident on the football field in 2024. I don't think the Cardinals are a superior roster. I don't think they're a superior team, but the coaching is finally starting to work its way in. The coaching is finally starting to show dividends. Again, what this defense can be, what this offense the potential has. They're the first place Arizona Cardinals, and I, for one, did not see this happening. So the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray, Jonathan Gannon, my hat's off to you. I was just wrong. And I'm okay with that. I can admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong. You guys are a much better football team than I ever thought you could be this year. So shout out to you. First place, deserve it. That is HardRight, HardLeft. When we come back, some closing statements. This is HardFoul Radio. I am the first person I've done on several different occasions to come in here and criticize baseball's lack of marketing, their lack of being able to show off their talent. And I've always done it from this place of love, even though it's one of the things I'm probably the most critical about, which is you could make a really easy argument. A really easy argument. Baseball is more talented right now with its current crop of players than the NBA, the NFL. I'm not as big into hockey, but take any sports league in the world, baseball, there's an argument. It is more talented than all of them. These are just the facts. But baseball has always struggled, especially over these last 10 to 15 years, to market a new set of stars, even though you've had a Mike Trout, even though you've had a Shohei Ohtani now for several years, even though you've had Mookie Betts. They have struggled mightily to get these new stars into that same kind of limelight that an Alex Rodriguez was in, that a Derek Jeter was in, and it wasn't just a Yankee thing. We couldn't even get the other great players. Like Albert Pujols did not need a big market to be a superstar. And with that, we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Some closing statements here as well as some Monday night check-in I always try to go to on the end of Monday's show, check-in with Monday Night Football. And the Chiefs are playing, and the totally dominant two-time defending champ doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, I guess. It's 3-0 in the second quarter, and look, and I said this on Mike Tomlin, and I was wrong about Mike Tomlin, I admit it, and if I end up being wrong about the Chiefs, I'm wrong. But at some point, it's not really even style points, but the eye test has to matter for Kansas City at some point. Like, it feels like you're barely winning these games. It feels like you get a favorable call. And we know there's a handful of things you already do better than most teams. You have the best head coach in football, so you're already probably up 3 to 6 points every single game because Andy is going to scheme a handful of plays that basically give you that many points. You also have at any given time the best quarterback in football. And again, I'm looking at it right now, and it's like the Bucks look like they're driving down the field. At some point, you just have to look better than these teams. And this current version, I understand the resume, the reputation, all that stuff has to be taken into account in a grand scheme conversation. But if we're looking at right now, I'm looking at a team that it's up 3-0, still doesn't look good on offense. The Bucks don't have a great defense. And I don't know. At some point, I just want to be impressed with the Chiefs, and so far I haven't. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe just don't be impressed all year and win a Super Bowl. I don't think they can, and that is part of why, again, it's not style points, but it is the eye test matters. Before we close out, though, and I want to talk a little this more, but today I want to give a little preview for tomorrow's show, and that is that I fear the Bears are doing what a lot of bad organizations do, and that is they're going to screw it up for their rookie quarterback. There's a really good chance right now, if you look, again, we just saw the Saints totally crash out because of the way guys reacted to Dennis Allen, and then he got fired, and you saw the immediate fallout of a team that the guys were no longer inspired, people didn't want to hear from anymore, they didn't believe in as a coach, all these other things that were happening, and the Bears feel like because the Saints was so bad, the Bears maybe don't look as bad. But DJ Moore going on a radio show saying, I hope he hasn't lost the locker room, or I want to say no, he hasn't lost the locker room. Caleb with his comments post-game, a lot of the just disgruntled reports that are coming out, like a lot of stuff is leaking out of Chicago. And normally for any business, if a lot of people are talking about you, especially employees, it's because it's not well run. It's not well, the infrastructure is bad. And that's what it looks like is happening in Chicago currently. And it's going to be even worse because there's a really good chance Caleb Williams, just like Mitch Trubisky, 2 head coaches in 2 years, just like Justin Fields, 2 head coaches in 2 years, it kind of feels like Caleb Williams is heading towards this. And again, some of this stuff I'm going to bring up tomorrow, but it's like at some point the Bears players are going to start thinking, okay, are we actually a good team? Well, who have we beaten? The Jaguars, not a good team. The Panthers, not a good team. The Rams, really injured at the time. Probably their most injured they've been all year. Otherwise a good team. And the Titans with Will Levis. So, and just, you see all this stuff. And again, I feel like expectations just got accelerated because not only did they draft Caleb Williams, but then it became, oh, well, they were a 7-win team and they're going to have even better quarterback play. And they're going to have, the defense is even better, and they bring in Keenan Allen, and they draft Rome Dunze, and everything was positive, and there was people on national sports media going, one of them even said the Bears could make the Super Bowl, and now they just look nuts. But that's again, these expectations that I think were unfair to give to Caleb Williams, to give to a Bears team that was, at some point we really have to evaluate what is the difference between good quarterback play and good football player. And I think we haven't truly found the equation for it. This is why Lamar Jackson, great football player. And even before he became, which right now I think Lamar Jackson is a certified playing like a Hall of Fame, just pure quarterback, when he was still in this twingy stage where like he needed his legs, but he was a good thrower, but he needed his legs to run. We didn't give that the same credit or the true value that it deserved. And Justin Fields has true value as a football player. And I think some of that, how good he was last year, was underrated because we didn't view him as an elite quarterback. But if you're picking up yards, you're gaining first downs, you're doing all of these things, that helps your team win, as well as all we've heard about Justin Fields is how great he is in the locker room, and that has an impact. And again, like, watch the play. DJ Moore just walks off. We're going to go more into detail about this, but I think there's a lot of, I'm not here to say Caleb is a bust. I'm not here to say anything bad about, the individual players, but I think the organization as a whole, which has struggled over the last decade plus, I think it looks like they're repeating a lot of the same mistakes, especially if they get rid of Eberflus again, who I'm not saying is the wrong decision to get rid of Eberflus. I just think the timing could have been better. If I'm going to do this whole roster overhaul and coach overhaul, like, look what Washington did, bring a new coach, new quarterback, they got new owner, like entirely everything brand new. because you got to pair that with Jaden Daniels, and that's all Jaden has ever going. That's all Jaden has known now in the NFL is a good head coach, good general manager, good ownership, all that stuff. It's all been good, and that matters. Caleb is now going to see dysfunction, and maybe he's going to be able to separate it and go, okay, now that I've seen dysfunction, I only want what's better. But there's a possibility, because there's a lot of quarterbacks that don't do well when they see the dysfunction, when they're a part of it, when they've experienced it. And so that's my fear for Caleb. Again, out of all the rookie quarterbacks, Bo to me has the best head coach currently with Sean Payton, and the fact he's on the offensive side of the ball. Jaden probably has the most stability from ownership, GM, and just more good players at the moment. And Caleb right now, even though he has good players, I feel like there is going to be this struggle between what he's able to do and what the organization is doing. And I just hope that doesn't derail what should be a very promising career. With that being said, I appreciate everybody as always. This is the show that